welcome back to yet another live episode of Green and White, brought to you by Argyle Live. Before we get into tonight's podcast, those watching may have already seen the teaser, but for the benefit of those listening back tomorrow, we have some incredibly exciting news to share with you around midday on Monday. Keep your eyes peeled on our social media channels, and putting it lightly, we're going to need your help. So it's a big one. Also, whilst we're here, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Anyway, on to my poorly written intros. Argyle headed up to the Hawthorns amidst a downpour, and although the pre-match forecast appeared to guarantee a home win, Argyle looked rejuvenated post-Sunderland. Argyle weathered a bit of a first-half storm as West Brom rained 3 shots against the post, but we went into the break with plenty of positives. However, it wasn't the weather that put the dampener on things. Josh Madger managed that all on his own, breaking the ice in the 62nd minute, leaving Carlos Corberan's Baggies on cloud 9. Argyle still needing a win away from home to really kickstart Rooney's reign. Yes, managed that with no stutters. Joining me tonight, come rain or shine, Graham, how's things? Oh, I think Graham's frozen.
Enthused about the overall performance yesterday.
Yep, I think you unfroze that halfway through,
but the performance was generally pretty good.
Adam, how's things?
Good evening. Yeah, very well, thank you. It's we're going to go. It's rare after a defeat to say yes, I'm very well, but I think generally speaking, we can all be pleased. So we'll come on to some more of that later, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe Bell, how's things?
This big announcement tomorrow, I think it's fairly evident to everybody, the members of the Green and White podcast who aren't here. So is that a clue as to what this big announcement is? Who knows?
Who knows? It could be the end of all things Sam Down on the Green and White podcast. It might not be, but you'll have to find out tomorrow, midday-ish, have a physio appointment, so you might get it around 1 o'clock, actually. But, timekeeping's never been our strong point. Joe, whilst you're unmuted, why don't you give us a customary post-match run-through of yesterday?
Yeah, okay. I thought it was always going to be a really interesting thing to see how Wayne Rooney was going to set us up against a West Brom side that have a very set style of play, and that's not a criticism because it works so well. In the past on this podcast, we've been critical of how sides set up and the style of football they play. Well, it's totally different for West Brom. They're an excellent footballing side. And I was a little bit apprehensive that we might go there and just try and, park the bus, low block sort of thing. And actually, there was none of that. We were fearless in the first half. And on the whole, in that first 45, I don't actually think we allowed West Brom to control it perhaps as much as they like. We had pockets of possession that, I'll accept a lot of the time we didn't do a lot with, or there was always a little mistake that would then turn the ball over. But I think we were doing okay. It would be remiss of me to talk about the first half to say that we were incredibly fortunate to go in 0-0, because, they had 3 efforts on goal, and if they'd scored all 3, then we probably wouldn't have had too many complaints. I think the one that stood out to me was the Carlan Grant effort. I think in the first half he was comfortably the Baggies' best player. I think he was causing us all kinds of problems. But equally, on the flip side to that, is we were getting chances. We were getting moments where we got in behind. Ryan was offside a couple of times. And then through just pure determination, Morgan robs the ball off Kyle Bartley, who's an experienced centre half who should know better, and he's through 1-on-1 with our old friend Alex Palmer, and unfortunately the one thing he shouldn't have done he did, and that was just hit it straight at him. I think if he'd put it either side of him, there's almost certainly no way Palmer could have got to it. Ryan had a chance, didn't he, where he got through, and he was just whether or not he was off balance when he went to take the shot or not, I'm not sure. But to go in at 0-0, I was absolutely delighted. Because we weathered that storm. We were very fortunate to go in 0-0. Let's not have it any other way. And if it had gone in 3-1, I don't think anybody inside the Hawthorns could have had too many complaints. Into the second half, and what a first 15 minutes that was. We didn't allow West Brom to settle at all. We were getting in some really good space. We were getting the ball out wider, which I think was key to how we changed in the second half. The ball was going to Sissoko and Whittaker quicker. And then who'd have thought we'd be sat here saying this? The goal comes against the run of play in the second half as West Brom took the lead eventually. And I'm sort of torn as to whether or not it's just a really good ball and Madger's in the right place at the right time, or actually whether or not we've just misread the whole situation and we're expecting it to be pulled back to the edge of the box, and we weren't able to pick up Josh Madger. And then we lost our way for a few minutes. We were sort of caught in a rock and a hard place, whether or not just to sit back and see what came our way, or to go for it. And we turned the ball over far too easily. And then we came good again in the last 10, 12 minutes, and we really gave it a go. I thought West Brom's game management was questionable in the last 10 minutes. I think it was almost like they were trying to find a way to give Argyle back the ball. It was like they fancied a bit of defending practice. But look, overall, West Brom are a fantastic side. I don't think they were anywhere near their silky smooth best yesterday, but without going all Ian Foster on the podcast, they are an excellent side. And we acquitted ourselves really well. If people have got the time to take a look at the FOTMob stats from the game, there's not a lot of difference. There's a lot of parity on almost every metric that's on there. So they're a good side. And if you're going to lose the game, you want to lose it to a bit of quality. And we did lose it to a bit of quality. It was a good ball in from the right-hand side, and Madger's there. That's where I'd expect Ryan Hardy to be, 95 yards at the other end of the pitch. So, look, fair play to them. They got the win. You can't say they didn't deserve it, because it, as I say, it could have easily been 4-5, whatever. But equally, we had chances to get on the scoreboard ourselves. And as the comment on screen from Kenny says, the biggest frustrations, we had decent spells of possession. We didn't do much with it. But the key point to take out of that is we had decent spells of possession against a team who like to control the game. And I think actually there are a lot more positives to take out of that game than negatives. And I think the reaction at full time, it didn't look like many people had left that away end at the full time whistle, and they all stayed behind to give the lads a good round of applause, because that was a bloody good effort against a very good side.
Yeah, it's not. It's quite unusual that I'm going to go to a social question so early, Adam. But Nikki asks, why did the away end smell so much of toast? Never been so hungry at a match before. Argyle tweeting saying West Brom's away end smelling divine, by the way. That's my take on today's game. Where do the Hawthorns rank in the list of best smelling away days? Can you describe the smell for listeners who weren't lucky enough to be there?
Oh, you're testing me. Do you know, this might come as a shock to you. I don't have a full ranking of best smelling away ends in the Championship. Maybe it's somewhere I'm lacking. I don't know. I might not be the best person to ask, because I couldn't really smell the toast. I mean, maybe I've got a cold and I don't know it. Maybe I've got COVID again. The allergies are playing with me. I don't know. I thought it was a fine smelling away end, but fine is all it was. I didn't get too hungry. I will say again, and Graham will know this, having travelled the same way, and a few others who regularly comment on it. I was possibly not getting hungry because of the senior greens breakfast I'd had on the way to the game. That's another explanation, but I don't think that should have messed with my sense of smell either. Yeah, as I say, well, it's the best smelling that I've ever considered the smell of. Let's put it like that. Must rank above Portsmouth for sure. And I suppose generally the ground itself was you could tell it was ex-Premier League. It was a nice place to be, and for a lot of that, I thought with the fan zones and the experience that I'd fancy going back because it seemed like a generally nice away day. The only difference being that getting back to the coaches afterwards, if we're talking about the away day smell, I think where we were parked, I think you'd best describe the smell as industrial. um, which isn't the best welcome to a place, I guess, and it was a nice uphill stroll where luckily we avoided the storms as well. Yeah, I hope that's a nice couple of minutes on the sense of the game, and I'm probably not the best person to ask, as I say, but if I did have to put that criticism in, it would be that the industrial smell certainly came across to my nose at least more than the toast smell did in the away end.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to put money on anybody from the pod parish keeping a definitive ranking of the smells of away ends, you'd be quite high. Adam.
Can you
Some of
imagine? So
it,
yeah, and I'm sorry to disappoint. It's something that maybe I'll set up for next season. I always
please
have a
do.
little refresh of what I've missed, and that clearly is a gaping hole in my armor. So watch this space.
So the news for tomorrow definitely isn't any official rankings of away day smells.
Can I
Unfortunately,
just say that there was most? Can I just say that there was most definitely a smell of toast. Adam was quite near the front. I was about halfway back, and there was a definite smell of toast with a sort of cinnamon twist, which was quite intriguing. Which everyone was thinking, "What's that smell?" Nobody had any idea where it was coming from. But as Adam said, the Hawthorns is a Premiership ground. The way end is good. The way and facilities are good. The in and out is good. The policing was good.
Oh, I think we've lost you there, Graham. I don't know if you want to reconnect or whether that's just my internet. But not the best connection in the world. I don't know whether you want to reboot your laptop and jump back in. But it's not an issue that we struggle with on the Green White Podcast Live. So it's a first time for everything, I suppose. Anyway, back to the game rather than smells, and we'll get Graham's initial thoughts.
Is that better?
Oh, much better. Go on, carry on where you were.
Yeah, is that better? Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. So just briefly, to finish off on the Hawthorns, Premiership ground, well stewarded, well policed, very welcoming, and we had a great pre-match time in the Vine, which was run by an Indian family that's with all the trimmings, which is quite unusual for a pre-match football pub, but really good. In terms of the game, I think what Joe said is true. West Brom, I think, will be there or thereabouts in the top two.
Oh, sorry, Graham, I had to cut you off there. I barely caught a word of that, which isn't the best for an audio-based platform. So, like I said, I don't know if you want to refresh and we'll get you back in. Sorry. Anyway, where were we talking about? I don't know. Adam, do you want to give us any actual thoughts on the game rather than just smells?
Yeah, go on then. I'll touch on the football as well. Yeah, it's been well covered, I think, by the lads so far. I think it's rare, to be honest, that I come away from a game and I barely have any complaints at all. I'm usually either disappointed with the performance or the result, or the fact that the result came in and we didn't deserve it, or a mixture of all three. So I think that looking at it, I can generally be satisfied with a lot of the experience. I mean, first and foremost, no complaints about results because the best team won. We've had a few around saying, it was undeserved, we were the better side. I think that's something football fans do a lot of when a team plays slightly better than you think, it's immediately, oh, they must have been the better side. We saw, the example I'll always use is the England-Scotland game at the Euros 2021, where Scotland were a bit better than we thought we might be, and England was certainly a lot worse. And it was like, oh, well Scotland must have been better. Well, no, we still hit the post, still had the best chances. So, that's the sort of thing that happened yesterday. The better team did win, but they weren't the better team by miles, which, considering we're going there to a team who's clearly going to be up there come the end of the season, and we've had our struggles, shall we say, before last week, I think is generally all we can ask for. If we look at what's happened, they hit the post 3 times, and any team that hits the post 3 times is probably looking at it and thinking, how on earth are we not ahead? But it's not as if we were giving up gilt-edged chances to make that happen. They hit the post from some very good shooting and some very unlucky shots that just didn't go in. There was the Grant one, perhaps was the best one, but there's a few others from the edge of the box where they get the shot away and it looks very accurate, and they've just got a bit unlucky. That happens sometimes, and if they go in, it is what it is. But it wasn't as if we've been carved open time and time again, as we've seen a few times, and they just weren't finishing them. They were doing well to get as close as they were, and we had our chances as well. Joe's mentioned the one with Whittaker, which is absolutely correct. So probably our best chance of the day. But there's been a few others as well. There's the Sissoko one just after JB had his shot saved, where I don't know if that's. I mean, I've not watched that one back, which is slacking of me. I don't know if he was right in his protest of a corner or whether he has just missed the opportunity. But it again is another one of those where we've developed some sort of opening, which is great to see. And when you piece it all together, you never want to lose a game, but this is possibly the most encouraging defeat, if you want to put it like that we've had for quite a while. Because to put it this way, in the last 2 games, 1 home game, 1 away game, we have looked every inch a Stephen Schumacher side from the first half of last season, where we've won a thrilling game at home, we've gone away, not got the result, but we've got a lot of their supporters saying, think you might be the best team that's visited all season, which got very old very quickly. But I think it's got to be a good sign because of the way that this club perhaps started to fall apart after Stephen Schumacher's exit. The fact that we're looking at it, if we put those 2 performances against Sunderland and West Brom in last season, they would not have looked out of place at all in the general way that our season was going. And considering where we started, considering the Sheffield Wednesday game, which possibly, I know we've had this discussion and probably will again in years to come, was it the worst Argyle performance we've ever seen? It possibly was. It's chalk and cheese from that. So you can be disappointed with the result. I think we all are. But that performance compared to where we've been, and just 6 games ago, or just 5 games ago, let's not forget, that's a huge plus. And it's very readily said, and it was very readily said at the start of last season as well. But if we play like that every week, we are not going to be one of the sides in trouble. It's easier said than done, but it's a massive plus and a massive indication of the direction in which we're hopefully heading.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's try you again, Graham. Adam's touched on it there. Plenty of chances in that first half. West Brom unlucky not to score, smashing the woodwork 3 times. Some good chances for us too. As Adam said, JB, Sissoko, Whittaker. Yeah. In terms of boring 0-0s, that first half wasn't one of them, was it?
Well, sorry, I did look it up. No, I did look it up, and actually, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, a bit better.
Yeah. Out of the 24 championship sides, we had the 5th most shots out of all of them, which for an away side wasn't bad. We actually made Palmer make more saves than Dan Grimshaw had to make. So there's a little bit of context. The West Brom shots that hit the post were all speculative efforts from outside. I think all of them are outside the box. I'm not an XG expert, but I'm not sure that they would have had a high rating. So if you take those out, they were the better side. But I was impressed, particularly the way we played out in the first half and most of the second half. Fluid passing movements, pinging it first time, getting it wide, getting it to Whittaker and Sissoko. And when they took on their wing backs or fullbacks, we looked dangerous. And perhaps we didn't get enough support for Ryan Hardy, but that seems to be the way they play. I mean, if you compare with West Brom, their middle 2, who was Rajic and Howard, they got up to support their front men quite quickly. And I thought those 2 are 2 of the best midfielders I've seen all season. And they definitely make West Brom tick, and everything flows through them. But yeah, I mean, several outstanding performances, particularly from Cornell, who's looking every inch a potential Premiership player, in my view. He was tested for pace, matched him, and he ushered the ball out, which I thought that was probably his first test since, I think it was Jason Kumas, who skinned in Stoke. So he's looking impressive. So yeah, it was an encouraging performance. If only Bundu hadn't have overhit that ball in the last minute, Joe Edwards was there with a free header at the back post, and it would have been a famous equaliser. But it wasn't to be. But I think credit to the team. As others have said, the statistics show we were equals, but class tells, and in major, they've got a class forward who is going to score a lot of goals this season. Interestingly, on a free transfer from Bordeaux.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off again there, Sam. Look, I'm going to have to do a bit of a post editing tonight to cut out those breaks in play. Joe, 2 changes. Who were they? Where's my notes just gone? Oh, we're having a technical nightmare tonight. Forshaw and Hardy in for Wright and Obafemi. It looked to me as if Forshaw was slightly higher than we expected. It looked like we had just Randall sat in that pivot. But sure, we don't have any qualms of how we set up, really, do we? There was a few moans and groans online when Forshaw was mentioned that he was in the 11, but
I actually thought Adam Forshaw had a pretty good game. Personally, I thought he was lucky to get away with one early on, a tackle on Ratchich, I think it was, who then returned the compliment at the other end of the pitch and got duly punished for it. But yeah, I thought Forshaw had a good game. I think it's interesting. The Argyle analyst on X put out a good thread last week after the Sunderland game, highlighting that it was more of a 4-3-3 than a 4-2-3-1, and I think it was particularly evident yesterday that we are playing a bit more of a fluid 4-3-3, than a rigid 4-2-3-1. Although I accept at times yesterday, as you say, Randall was the sole pivot, and it was almost more a 4-1-4-1, wasn't it? And I think that was just to directly cover off, if you like, West Brom's style of play, because as mentioned, they suffocate the midfield. They make it very difficult for you. They make it very hard to play around you or in front. They want you playing in front of them because then they can pick up your runners. Now, in the first half, we did quite well to still manage to get Ryan in behind a couple of times and Morgan. And as Graham touched on, I thought Darnell Furlong's probably one of the best fullbacks in this division, and has been probably now for the last 12, 14 months. And actually, Ibi Sissoko gave him a right game yesterday for the 70 odd minutes that he was on the pitch. So no, it's the 2 change. I did feel a little bit for Callum Wright initially when I saw the team. I expected Ryan would play instead of Obafemi. I think they're going to be on a bit more of a rotational basis. But I thought it was a little bit harsh on Callum yesterday that Forshaw came in, because actually, as that game went on last week against Sunderland, Callum Wright grew into the game a little bit. He had a bit of a shaky start, but he got better and showed a bit of his quality. So it was a little bit harsh on him. But look, Adam Forshaw came in, did a job. But don't be surprised if there's a fair bit of rotation in those midfield positions as we move forward, because I think the front 3 positions, it's probably picking 4 players from 3, in the respect that it's Sissoko, Whittaker, Hardy, Obafemi. It's always going to be a combination of those 4 to fit those 3 spaces. In behind, it's a little bit less cut and dry. Obviously Jordan Houghton's yet to really get involved, isn't he? So there's obviously the prospect of him coming back into the side. So All in all, the two changes didn't really have a bearing on the result. If anything, you could argue it made us a little bit more solid, didn't it? So, yeah, good performance. Absolutely no qualms. And, I think Rooney, we praised him last week quite rightly, and we should praise him again, because that was a performance where he extracted every bit of energy and effort and desire and commitment out of the group. So, the people on a national basis have a lot of criticism for this Argyle side, but every game is an improvement. The Sheffield Wednesday game, we didn't perform well for any of the 90 minutes. The next 4 games, we performed well for 45 minutes of the 90 in all 4 games. I think that's fair to say. We probably had one good half in each of the 4 games. Yesterday, we had a good hour, I would say. A good hour of that 90 minutes was really promising from Argyle, and we really had our feet in the door. So sooner rather than later, we'll have a 90-minute performance where it all clicks. And but the signs are there, Aaron. It's a little bit like Schumacher's Argyle last season when we first come into the division. You don't envisage, and look, I'm setting myself up to be clipped here because we have already been beaten 4-0 already this season. You don't envisage at the moment that this is a team that's going to just be carved open and pushed to one side, because there's a real solidity, if you like, to this group now, and every game's improving. And what better than Luton and Burnley in the next 2, eh?
Yeah, you're right. You're incredibly bold to say that after we have been smashed 4-0 on the opening day. But I do agree with you in the fact that we are slowly getting there. And we'll get on to Luton at home in a bit. Adam, before we move on to the social questions properly that aren't just about toast, any individuals from either side that you feel worthy of discussion?
I want to talk about JB, and I want to talk about how his performance impressed me in large parts, and where I want to see him go from here. Because yesterday he's done so much well. He's some of those turns to get himself into space to drive into, that we know he likes to do with space in front of him, were particularly impressive. And I think it's something that I mentioned to a few people across the day, that you can tell already. I mean, this is his first full season of senior football, realistically, and you can tell already he's so much more a completer player than he was when we first got him in January. He's added so much to his game. He's getting himself into areas where he can be effective, and I really like what he's got going on. I just want to see that final piece. I want to see that improvement keep going, so that he can bring it all together in the final third, because he's got so much talent, and he's got too much talent for it to go to waste when it gets to the final bit. And there were just a couple of instances yesterday. One, for example, where in the first half, where I felt like he could have played Whittaker in after one of those brilliant breaks. He makes it all himself. This isn't a major criticism. I think he's done 90% excellent. Just that final bit that could have gone to Whittaker, that I think would have given us an opportunity. A similar thing, I think, happened in the second half. It may have been Al Haj, it may have been Obafemi. I don't know who it was. There was one occasion with Randall, and one with JB, with Al Haj and Obafemi. I can't remember which way around. But again, that's just another example of, you've had a fantastic game. Just get that final bit right, and he could be absolutely deadly at this level. Because I think right now he's kind of encompassing our performances as a whole. He looks brilliant for very, very large periods, as Argyle generally did yesterday, and it was just getting that final moment. He obviously wasn't alone in that. That he needs to improve. The good news, obviously, is that on current trajectory, he will improve to get that, because he's already so much more of a player than he was 9 months ago. So by the end of the season, we could be looking at that. I know, looking at how he's played, particularly in the last couple, you can tell why Leeds spent 5 million on him, even if that was, let's say, heavily subsidised by that's the word, by Manchester City buying Calvin Phillips. But you can see that he's got all the potential to be the sort of player that they wanted. And yeah, just for the next few weeks or for the rest of the season, I want to see him work that final ball a little bit more, because if he does, he's going to be a tremendous asset. And before I go on, I'm not going to take as long on this one. once again, as I feel like I'm saying every week, as I know I mentioned last week that he may well be just my favourite footballer of all time now, I thought Joe Edwards was excellent again. The fact he's still doing this at his age and he's got his new deal, and I know there's been talk of could that be the last of it? I'm not sure it would be, quite frankly, if he keeps performing as he is and he keeps improving, he keeps getting those intelligence, or keeps that intelligence that a lot of players don't have. He could be doing this for many years yet. Very, very good again.
I think we've got to be mindful that we don't keep saying every time we praise Joe Edwards, or we've got to remember his age, because he might fall out of love. If he does listen, he might fall out of love with us.
Oh, maybe we find out tomorrow if he
all
listens
meant as
or
a
not.
compliment, Joe. Honest.
It depends what the news is tomorrow, doesn't it? If we find out whether he listens or not. Is that a spoiler? No, it isn't. But we can find out. Graham, you've turned your camera off. Let's see if that helps. If not, I'll just cut you off again because I'm cutthroat now in my new.
Yeah.
Role.
Is that any better?
Much better. Obviously,
Yeah, I know.
Quite a simple question, but West Brom definitely the best team we've played all season, aren't they? Where do you see them finishing? Top two? Oh.
Yes, I mean, compared to Sunderland, definitely. Sheffield Wednesday, you can't really judge that. If anybody heard me, they will be there or thereabouts at the end.
Oh, Adam turning his camera off
And I
and Joe
particularly like them.
Still made me think that maybe it was my internet that went down. So thanks, guys. Yeah, sorry, Graham. Yeah, might have to cut you from this or get you back on next week once we set Sam's EE Wi-Fi friends round to help sort you out. Do either of you want to take that question? Best team we played all season? Can you see them finishing
so.
top two?
I think what I will say is I've been quite strong on my praise for Sunderland up to last week, and even so, I think last week they weren't anywhere near at their best. They are still a very good side, but yeah, in terms of the other four that we played before then, it's definitely gone up a notch in terms of quality. Because I think the basic results since we've for those other teams prove that West Brom and Sunderland are the two best teams we've played. And actually, I think we caught both of them on bad days. As I say, Sunderland weren't anywhere near at their best a week ago. I don't necessarily think they were at their best against Middlesbrough yesterday, but they managed to get the result. And West Brom were obviously far from their best. But look, they're it's one of those things, and hopefully we manage to catch Luton and Burnley not at their best now in the next 2 weeks. But yeah, for sure, West Brom are definitely the best team we've played.
Yeah, I've completely forgot to do full-time thoughts. So should we do a couple of those? Alakin then said, I don't know how we lost that. Yes, we didn't create much in the second half, apart from the two Whittaker moments, nothing much more, but we bossed that game. Barry Evans said a decent performance, but fine margins decide games. Let's beat Luton on Friday. Come on, you Greens. Stevie Watts are hopeful for a mid-table finish this season, providing we keep to the levels shown. West Brom are very solid, well-drilled side at this level. Didn't expect much today, and I can only see them getting a top six, if not better, under their manager. We go again. Matt Lee, no complaints, match top of the table, and for a better finish by Morg's first half, could have taken something. Still worried by a trend of losing games. We deserve to draw, and drawing games we look like winning, but hopefully we start getting results that the performances deserve. And much of the similar theme from there. There was one I wanted to pick out from Jack Phillips, and it basically backed up what you said earlier, Adam. He said, I don't want to sound far-fetched, but are Plymouth perhaps the best side that we've played so far this season, which is we have a whole catalogue of those sorts of tweets, don't we, from last season. Moving on to some of the social questions, Kenny Pester, who I believe he was earlier in the watching along. So he asks, Adam, as much as Morgan Whittaker can produce a moment of magic, most games he now seems a bit like a passenger. Is it time to bring him more central?
it's an option. Shall we say that? I think it's important that with a lot of the conversation surrounding Whittaker right now, it's important to remember that he is still our best player. Like, he gets a lot of, I think, unjust criticism because he hasn't put one in from 30 yards every single game, so he must be doing a little bit worse than last time. It's not that he's still, and I think I don't tar Kenny with this brush. I think that the question that he's put in there and the way he's phrased that as we know he can do moments of magic, I think is completely fair enough. He's still an excellent player. I think it's one of those where perhaps this system doesn't suit him quite as much as others might. We know he was at his absolute best, in my opinion, at least, when he was in those inside forward positions with Finn Azaz and was able to threaten from there. So it's not always going to be like that. But I don't know. I think even if Morgan Whittaker isn't delivering the same numbers he did last season, and he still might, I mean, it's still very early on in the campaign, he can still hit a hot run as he did last time. I still think the way that we're using in this position does still quite naturally aid the team as a whole, because if opponents know that he's a danger man, well, Ibi Sissoko is going to have a lot of opportunities on the other side. And I think particularly if you look at Whittaker yesterday, he's completed a really solid number of long passes, and a lot of those being switches to the other flank. That is something that he's going to have to adapt to continue having this impact, because if he is being double marked, the space, as I mentioned, is going to be on the other side. He's showing he can do that as well. So it's one of those, if you want to get the best out of Whittaker, then perhaps you do bring him to the middle. But I still think that the best for the entire team is having Whittaker where he is, because he still can be mightily effective as QPR, but also he's got so much talent that he can help bring others into play as well. I think it's important to remember that he's still our best player, and he can still offer so much from where he is.
Yeah, two big comments coming in quickly, Joe. Sorry,
hang on.
Muting you. Sorry, two big comments coming in really quickly. Kenny says, my thinking behind that is that teams put two on him. They'll continue to do that centrally, leaving room for wingers and fullbacks to get in behind. And coming in live from Savvy_7 says that there is a bread factory opposite the Brummie Road. So that explains the smell of toast. Joe, I've unmuted you. Go on, carry on.
Well, I'll pick up the crumbs of that. And I'm here all week. I'm absolutely flabbergasted at some of the criticism that was labelled at Morgan Whittaker yesterday, because I actually thought just because he isn't, as Adam says, just because he's not banging one in from 35 yards out doesn't mean he's had a bad game. And actually, I think yesterday was probably one of his more influential games of the season. He was giving the left fullback, Hegem, all sorts of problems, just like Sissoko was on the far side. And Kenny sort of answered it himself. What do people expect him to do when teams are doubling up on him every week? It's noticeable how fearful opposition teams are at the moment of Morgan Whittaker, because every game he is at least double marked. Last week against Sunderland, he had 3 on him at home, down in front of me in that first half. So I couldn't understand the criticism. I thought he had a very good game yesterday. Look, I'd love for him to get a few more touches in the box, but if you look at Sissoko and Hardy's touch map, there weren't too many touches in the box for all 3 of them, really. So he can't be scoring worldies every week. And as Adam says, the way we're playing just benefits the whole team. And it suits him, because as us go back to earlier, it's almost gone back to the fluid 4-3-3 that we implemented at the start of last season. We've gone back to what we're good at. And what we were good at the start of last season had Morgan Whittaker on everybody's lips. Everybody was talking about him. So just because he hadn't scored a worldie doesn't mean he's had a bad game. And I actually think yesterday he was one of our better players. I really do.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to Adam here, Joe, because the next question's basically your whole life, and it's everything you talk about all the time. So I'm gonna give you that one. But go back to Adam. Strictly Plymouth, and Joe did actually touch on this earlier, Adam, so there's no need for Joe to answer it again. Strictly Plymouth, we need good subs off the bench to either continue the quality of the game or change it up. Who are the players that can do this? Obviously, they bring on the likes of Mikey Johnson, and we bring on Callum Wright and Mustafa Bundu. Obviously, I appreciate there are levels to this game, and there is a reason why they are top of the league and we are not. But who are going to be our key impact makers off the bench, if anyone?
Yeah. My obvious answer is going to be Rami Al-Haj, but to be honest, I imagine he's going to be starting sooner rather than later when he gets those levels of fitness up. So perhaps not him. I mean, I think, like you say, there are levels to this. There are budgetary constraints. You can't have an excellent starting squad and also an excellent 9 men on the bench when you've got one of the lowest budgets in the league. We have to recognise that. But I mean, would it be controversial to say maybe at some point in this season, Mohamed Tijani? You know, he's not got an awful lot of fans at the minute, and he doesn't seem to be fit all the time, which definitely isn't helping his cause. But you know, he's got something that nobody else in this team does. With his physicality and the way that he can add a different dimension to the attack. And if things are going badly wrong, he offers a very, very obvious plan B in the way that Sam Cosgrove does. Now, I've not seen enough of him to give me confidence that he can hit the numbers that Cosgrove did in League One. And, you know, I think we perhaps cutting him a little bit of slack that he's only played, what, just over 100 minutes? Maybe not even that? I don't know. But anyway, I feel like he's the sort of player who can do that, who has the potential to do that, and I really want to see him reach it. He's obviously got to get fit first. I don't know. I frankly have no idea what's happening in the background. There's so much rumours surrounding him at the minute that I kind of lock myself out of it. I just want to see him get a bit more of a chance because he's, as I say, he offers something that we don't have. He can offer us the opportunity to change things up, and to bring it back to the framing of the question, he is the sort of player that I'd expect to see come off the bench and either improve us or change us in certain matches. Because for all due respect to the players that we mentioned, I think taking Sissoko off for Bundu pretty obviously lowers the quality in the side. I think you can possibly have similar conversations with Callum Wright as well, albeit I didn't necessarily think he did too badly in his cameo yesterday. So I think, yeah, even if you're doing it that way, the players or the style is going to be very similar, whereas Tijani would offer us something completely different. I really want to see him knuckle down. I really want to see him get fit, and I really want to see him involved.
Yeah, Joe, as I said, you make this your life, so I want heart and soul in this answer. Barry Evans says, ref watch. Was I the only one to notice a number of handballs yesterday? I don't remember any, but maybe I'm different. Joe, give us a little ref watch segment.
I wasn't expecting one tonight, to be honest, because I don't have anything to say.
Okay.
I know John had a little criticism about the 4-minute stoppage time, but there were only 5 substitution stoppages in that second half. I think they've binned the whole 30 seconds per substitution, haven't they? It's just, you know, they just make a generic number up, and I don't recall the physios being on the pitch too many times in yesterday's game. So no, I don't have anything to add on the referee. So let's move on.
Good. I like that. I like a nice, short, sweet ref
Thank
watch.
you.
And we have nothing to say. Absolutely brilliant. Is there anything you guys want to add on yesterday before we get on to the any other business, including Adam's already mentioned it, but Joe Edwards' contract extension? No? Graham, should we do another little quick sound test? No.
That was decisive.
Okay. Sorry. Anyway, it was worth it. Anyway, any other business? Joe Edwards' contract extension, already mentioned it. He's gained a year-long extension to 2026. As you mentioned in the group chat, Joe, it'd be absolutely heartbreaking to see him in another shirt, wouldn't it? Just how great is it to see the captain's hard work rewarded with an extension? And much like Adams last week, Joe Edwards gives him an extension. Too much?
Yeah,
He's not wrong.
definitely too much. Yeah, it's great to see that his hard work's been rewarded. I'd be interested to know when these conversations started. I don't imagine it was something that was discussed at full time last week. How long has these conversations been going on? We know they certainly would have started after April the 1st, because the current incumbent of the head coach chair seemingly wasn't a fan of Joe Edwards. So it's happened since then. I would imagine this has been going on throughout the summer since the Hull game, I would guess. And what's noticeable about Joe Edwards, and it was mentioned in the post-match press conference after Sunderland last week, that he effectively manages the dressing room these days. Rooney's the head coach, but he leaves it to Joe Edwards to sort of manage the group. He takes on sorting tickets out for family and friends, and he takes on, he does we've all seen those very famous fines lists, and I'm sure we'll see another one for this season that gets posted on the change room door. And what is incredibly noticeable is how good a relationship Joe Edwards has with that dressing room, and that's obviously a big part as to why Wayne Rooney had him. But he played a big part in the warm-up, didn't he, at MK Dons, and sat alongside him on the bench in that final pre-season game. And equally, am I right in saying he sat on the front row of the bench at Hillsborough alongside Rooney and the coaching staff as well?
I think there was something in the Herald about him having a more of a coaching role for the day.
Yeah. And look, I'm not going to sit here now that he's got this 1-year extension and say that that's it. He should hang his boots up, go on, get the clipboard and the whistle out. But it's noticeable that
sounds
Wayne
like you're
Rooney...
saying that he's too old.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that at all. It's just noticeable that Wayne Rooney and Neil Dewsnip, Kevin Atskill, everybody up there has such a huge amount of trust in Joe Edwards. And he is universally respected in that dressing room. All you have to do is look at social media, the amount of players who've played in the past who sent congratulations messages to him on the new contract. I just think it's a wonderful deal. I'm hugely excited by the fact that by the end of that, am I right in saying it will be 8 seasons if he sees the contract out? 8 seasons, 9 seasons that he'll have amassed. I'm going to start the campaign now at 47 minutes into this podcast. Get the testimonial sorted, because I promise you the array of ex-players that Joe Edwards could call on for that testimonial just from his time at Argyle would get quite a few people flocking back to Home Park to watch that game in the summer. So I'm delighted. As Adam says, it's evident with how he started the season, with how well he keeps himself fit, and he alluded to it in his Argyle Breakfast TV interview this week, how focused he is, that there's plenty of games left in those legs, and long may it continue, because I alluded to it in my tweet when the announcement was put out. He's certainly the best captain I've ever seen at Argyle. And whilst I can't speak for the older generations of the Green Army, he would certainly be in the conversation to be up there for one of the greatest of all time, I would say.
And I think they've summarised that quite nicely. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Adam?
Not that hasn't already been said in both this week and last. It's one of those that I think has universally been received as good news. There's nobody at all that I've seen saying, why have they given him that sort of deal? He deserves it and more.
I'd like to propose a change to the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Life running order on a weekly basis. We sack off Ref Watch and have a Joe Edwards watch for about 10 minutes every week.
Happily, don't give me a choice to
that can last at least 5 days before we have a terrible refereeing performance against Luton, and then the clamour will be back.
Yeah, unfortunately. Obviously, Adam, next up, Luton Town, home Friday night, under the lights. I believe it's live on Sky, or else why else is it on a Friday night? Any initial thoughts on that one? Are you expecting a horrific refereeing performance?
I don't think at this level you can ever rule it out. But I think it's a very, very tough one to call. If you look at it results based, Luton have been in a strange one where they've had a pretty terrible start to the season and have recently scraped a couple of wins against some I'm saying some might consider relegation threatened sides in Millwall and Sheffield Wednesday. So how much do you want to read into that? It's entirely up to you. I think Luton, being a Premier League side of last season, are obviously going to come here with quite a bit of quality in their squad. I think there is an argument, certainly right now. I think, and I don't say this as a criticism of Rob Edwards as such. I think it's one where a couple of seasons ago he clearly overperformed and kind of did that again by the fact he nearly kept them in the league. I think they're not getting as much out of that talent so far this season as I expected. They have missed an awful lot of big chances, and there's always some ways that you can look at that. Some will say they can't hit a barn door. Some will say, well, it's much more of an issue to not be getting chances. If you're missing them, that will come. Which side of the argument do you want to fall on? Again, that's entirely personal preference. But I don't think we should look at this as perhaps we would have done in, I don't know, January to April last year, where we see a team coming down to home park and think we're going to have to respect them off the park. I think they're a sort of team where they will have opportunities because they're too good not to have opportunities. But in an atmosphere under the lights at home park and knowing the sort of team that we can be with the 4-3-3 shape, we've got every chance of taking the game to them. Are we going to start as favourites in the national media? Possibly not. But we know what sort of beast home park can be on those evenings, just as Leicester City. And I don't think this Luton team are anywhere near that quality in terms of what Leicester brought to home park last season without scoring a goal. So it feels very strange to say that I go in quietly confident, particularly because if you asked me this question 3 weeks ago, I'd have been dreading their visit. It's certainly not the case now. Yes, they've picked up a few results, but their performances haven't necessarily been any better. They've just been getting the results in the last couple. They weren't in their first few. And we've improved immensely. So it's let's call it very reassuring that we're going into a home game against what is undoubtedly a squad that has more quality in it, and knowing that we're going to try and take the game to them. And that's what serves us best. That's what we know. And if we get everything right, just as we did against Sunderland, it could well be enough to get us the result as well.
Yeah, Joe, we said we're going to keep this under an hour tonight, and we might actually manage it depending on how long you want to talk about Luton Town. Obviously, unless you've got anything to add on what Adam's just said, is there anybody you expect to start that we might switch up the lineup slightly? Is there any Swedish, Lebanese central attacking midfielders that you might see in that starting lineup?
Before I come on to that, I just want to echo what Adam said. I think Luton have a lot of quality in their side. I actually think they've got a player on the left-hand side who should have gone to Germany in the summer when we had our left-back issues, and he wasn't picked, in Alfie Doughty. And he's still there, which blew my mind at the end of the transfer window that somebody else in the Premier League didn't take a chance on him. I think they've got a tremendous quality. And you are right. Perhaps the start of the season definitely hasn't been what they wanted, and they got out of jail at the weekend. When you look at the decisions that went their way at the end of that game, the handball for the penalty and the sending off is questionable, and then there is almost definitely a questionable handball for the winner from Carlton Morris. So they got away with it at the weekend, and you'd be looking at Luton then, without a win, having been beaten by Sheffield Wednesday, and they'd be a totally different proposition. I have actually just seen who the referee was at Kenilworth Road at the weekend, Mr. Gavin Ward. So I'm not surprised.
You shocked me.
But no, on the game, I'm perhaps a little bit more confident than Adam, actually. I do think we're going to get something out of this. I think we have managed, and this goes back to the start of last season, etc., that we have managed to make home park a really tricky place to come for opposition, particularly when the pressure's on in the big games. We have managed to deliver more often than not, I would say, at home in the last 12 months. You think back to Leicester, Hull, Sunderland last week. But even games before that, when the pressure was on in the Rotherham game, the Stoke game, we really got out of jail in those games and managed to find a way to get a result. I do think we'll get a result. Team-wise, without knowing the strengths of Luton's back line would depend on whether Obafemi starts or Ryan Hardy gets another go. Obviously, we have to remember it's one less day preparation for this game, but then we gain a day's preparation for the Burnley game afterwards, don't we? So it's a bit of a catch-22, if you like, for players' recovery time, etc. I think it's almost inevitable that Rami El Hadj will start this. He's had good minutes off the bench now in the last 2 games. Rooney's already sort of hinted at it, hasn't he? Chris Errington's done the piece today. So I would say those would probably be the only 2 changes, unless there's a something we don't know about. Al Hadj will come in for, I would guess, Forshaw, and then it's just about whether Obafemi or Hardy start up front for me. But if we take the game to Luton and we try and hurt them early, then the crowd will be up on our side, and yeah, fingers crossed it will play to our advantage.
Yeah. Sorry, I was laughing to myself because I thought if we take the game, we'll be in the wrong stadium. But anyway,
I wish I was a little bit more confident though when we submitted our predictions before the month started, because I actually predicted a defeat in this one. But I'm actually now confident that we might get something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. Anything to add from either of you before we wrap this one up?
I don't think so. I was just going to say one final line of isn't it nice to be encouraged about going to watch Argyle play again, to be looking forward to this game on Friday against a big side rather than fearing it. It's a nice place to be, and I think it's testament to just how much growth has taken place in this squad in the last few weeks. Let's hope it's not a flash in the pan. Let's hope it continues, and if it does, we'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, there'll be a heavily edited version of this where all of our technical difficulties, my own included, are edited out for you on your podcast platforms tomorrow.
Very quickly, Andrew White's just put a comment up. I don't know if you want to show it on screen for the visuals, and I'll read it out for the audios. Obafemi, can he play the Burnley game? That might sway selection on Friday night. If he can't play Burnley, then he can run his heart out on Friday night, because he has a little bit longer to recover than Ryan Hardy will do. So there's just a little twist. I'm not saying that they'll already be planning one game in advance, but it's just something to bear in mind when a team selection's announced on Friday at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, nice. Okay, well, cheers, guys. We'll call that a night. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Can't remember the normal outro. Follow us on Twitter or X, Facebook, Instagram.
What are you doing at 1 o'clock tomorrow, Aaron?
I don't know. Find out. Make sure you follow us on all of those social platforms. Turn on those little notifications. Well, I think it's really exciting. You guys might not, but we'll find out tomorrow. Yeah, 1 o'clock. Anyway, we'll call that a night. Cheers, guys. Love you. Bye.
Cheers, all.
Oh, there's the thingy. There.
Our finest, this beautiful county and say.